Welcome back to another episode of In the Kitchen with Baker Girl. Thank you, Jesus. It is another beautiful day to be in the kitchen. And today, I want to take you along with me as I decorate this beautiful hot pink cow print cake for a very special young lady. And also, there is a secret inside this cake. Shh, I won't tell you what it is. You're just going to have to watch the video in order to find out. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please subscribe, give us a thumbs up, leave a comment, and let's jump into the video. All right, let's get started. I'm going to begin by removing the caramelization off of each one of my layers. And this is a 3-layer 9-inch vanilla cake. And then I'm going to take I think it's a 2.5-inch round cookie cutter, and I'm going to measure out exactly the center. Then I'm going to cut that center out with that cookie cutter. And you want to reserve that. You're going to do this with each of your 3 layers, but you only need one of the cutouts out of one of the layers. So you can, do something with the other 2. And here I am just making a batch. This is actually a half batch of my vanilla buttercream. If the mixer is very full, your buttercream will have less air bubbles because there's no room for the bubbles. So that's why you always use a smaller mixer bowl than you would think, because, the smaller the bowl, the fuller it will be, and the less air will beat into your buttercream. So I have taken a portion of it and I've put it in a small bowl. This will be my crumb coat buttercream. That way, if I get crumbs or something in this small, I'm not ruining my entire batch. And I took that little cutout that we saw earlier. I cut that in half, and now I'm putting half of that little cutout in the bottom that kind of fills in that hole. And then I'm going to apply some of my buttercream for my center. Now, the reason why we cut out the hole is because this cake is going to have a secret filled chamber. And this is how you do a center filled cake. And you do want to crumb coat that little secret chamber. And it's easier to crumb coat each layer versus, stacking the whole cake and then trying to crumb coat the inside of that little cutout. It's easier to do it this way. Now here I'm piping a support ring. This is just a buttercream support ring. Because we've removed that center out of each one of those layers, you do want to pipe that ring in there, and it helps support the center of the cake. We will not be using dowels with this cake. So that's where the buttercream support ring comes in. And I am applying buttercream to my second layer, and I'm just repeating the steps. You do want to make sure that as you apply your buttercream, you don't start filling in that center of the cake. So always just take your spatula and kind of smooth it out and crumb coat it. And yeah, I'm having to peer over into the center. I'm not the tallest lady in the world. So yeah, I do have to stand on tiptoe sometimes just to get a good look of what I'm doing when I'm doing things like this. And you just keep doing that. Pipe on another support ring. And here is the third and final layer. And you don't have to cut that center out of your top layer. As a matter of fact, I've seen some bakers just leave that layer whole. But I wanted to fill this with as much candy as possible. So I did remove that center out of the top layer. What I'm going to do is that remaining portion of that little cutout that I cut in half and added to the bottom layer, I'm going to fill in the very top portion of the hole with that remaining top cutout. And it's easier, as I said earlier, it's easy to crumb coat the center as you build the cake up versus going back and trying to do the whole thing. And yeah, as the cake get taller, Sarah's standing on tiptoe taller too. Okay, so I've got that nicely crumb coated. And want to make sure that it's smooth because this is the top of the cake. You do want to make sure it's nice and smooth. And there's a little sneak peek inside the candy chamber. Now it's time to fill it with the candy. And I use a mixture of M&Ms and hot pink chocolate candies. Now I'm filling in that center with the reserved buttercream. And I do crumb coat that inside of that with some buttercream. Just to make sure you don't have just dry cake sitting there, which, could get a little dry. And you crumb coat the entire cake just as if nothing happened. And it completely disappears and nobody will know but you until they cut into the cake, which I think is such a sweet surprise. It really is, because it's like a piñata, like a secret piñata cake. You don't know until you cut into it, then you're like, whoa, here's candy flying everywhere. So I'm going to crumb coat it, and I always prefer to use a piping bag to pipe on my crumb coat buttercream, just so I can fill in any holes, any gaps. And it kind of cuts down on the work of crumb coating the cake, because the piping bag applies it directly to the cake. And you just want to smooth it out. Remove that little excess that hangs around the top. And as I always say, you don't have to be excessive with a crumb coat, because this is a crumb coat. We will be adding a top coat, but the neater your crumb coat is, the better, the neater it is and the easier it is when you apply your final layer of buttercream. And I'm going to transfer the cake to a larger cake round, and I'm just putting a little piece of duct tape. That's just something we bakers do. It prevents the cake from shifting or moving on the board. Duct tape is very strong, as we all know, if we have, daddies who love to use duct tape. And I'm going to put the cake in the freezer and let it chill. Now I am piping on my first border. And this first border will be white. And the remaining borders that I will pipe will be hot pink, because that is what the young lady requested, was hot pink. And you want to take your time, pipe your border. You want your borders to be nice and pretty. Now here I'm just taking a cake skewer and I'm just etching out little patches for my cow print. You don't have to do this, but I prefer to do it because to me, I like a little bit of a pattern to work off of. Normally, when you actually take your small spatula, and here I'm just using some black buttercream. And once you start dabbing, you really don't follow that pattern that you etched out, but it gives you an idea of where your patches will go. So, your cake looks as, it's nice and neat as possible. So just take your time. This actually took quite a bit of time because I am a little bit of a neat freak. So yeah, I did quite a bit of editing in this entire cake, because this entire cake did take quite a bit of time. There's a lot of chilling involved. Now here I'm piping on the hot pink border, and I'm using a large shell tip for this cake, because you want to use different piping techniques and different piping designs. You don't all want it to be all the same thing, unless that's what you want. But I didn't want it. I kind of wanted it to be, a little of this, a little of that. So I'm adding on the letter L, because that is the young lady's initial. And I'm piping on my top shell border. And I love piping these large shells. They are so pretty. And it kind of helps to just kind of offset the cake too. I think a shell does a little better than, say, a ruffle, which you can do ruffle if you like ruffle. If that's what, your customer request is ruffle, you can do ruffle. But I just prefer the shells. I think they're so pretty. And I'm going to take a light pink buttercream, and I'm going to pipe on some tiny shells right along the border of the larger shells. And you see cakes now where people, they're putting 10 borders on a cake. And that's fine, but that does make a cake very heavy. Obviously, the more you're piping on, the heavier the cake gets. So I just I added quite a few borders, but not quite to the tune of 10, because we will be adding, I will be piping on some buttercream sunflowers on this cake as well. So just take your time and pipe on those cute little tiny pink shells. And the reason why I haven't sped this up or edited a lot of this out is so, some of you do actually like to see the piping. So I didn't edit this bit out, just so you can see in real time piping on the border. And this is the fun part. This is like the decorative part of the cake, the bit everybody likes to do, at least ways I do. And I will apply a top border to my hot pink in this light pink. The contrasting of the colors really, really helped to offset the cake too. Oh, it's looking so pretty. Thank you, Jesus. I am not a pink person by nature, but when it comes to cakes, especially if you want something girly, you can never go wrong with pink, right? I mean, I'm not going to say every girl loves pink, but, a pink cake just makes you feel happy. It's like, a little extra reason to smile. Now I am piping on my sunflowers, and I am using a small leaf tip because I don't want them to be too big. So I'm going to pipe some around her initial. And I am sorry, my arm gets in the way. My head gets in the way of my camera too. I can't help it. I'm sorry. I try to make sure I don't block the camera, but when you're decorating, your arms really is all over the place. So, okay. And you can add dimension to a sunflower by piping on just multiple layers of your petals. Now here I took some of my buttercream and I just added in some brown and black gel food color, just a tiny drop of black. It kind of darkens it a little bit. And I'm filling in the center of the sunflowers. And it just kind of gives it a more realistic look if you pipe in tiny little brown dots. I have seen some. You could use like tiny brown edible pearls. That works too if that's what you have. But I'm a buttercream person. Besides, if you're piping it onto the side of the cake, your little pearls may not stick. And I actually decided to add a few in the back. You don't want all the action to be on the front of the cake. And then you look around the back and there's nothing going on. You do want some pretty on the back of the cake too. That is why we call them custom cakes. Because they are customized and they do take time, and it's custom to what the customer wants. And she wanted pretty sunflowers with her hot pink cake. So filling in the center. And, you want to make sure your sunflowers are quite as realistic as possible. So some of them are filled in, some of them won't be filled in. Here I'm just using a leaf tip and piping on some tiny leaves. That makes it look a little bit more realistic. And I decided to add a few more petals. And then I decided to add some of my hot pink candies to the top. And just add on those final touches to make sure it's extra special. And thank you, Jesus, it's done. I hope you have enjoyed watching this video. If you have, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. And the good Lord willing, I'll see you in the next video.